Okay, let us start. Okay, in last session, what we did was we learned about Python data types and why data types exist. That is to tell CPU that okay, I am consuming this much of memory, and this is how much space I am sending to you as a data, and you need to calculate based on that. Okay, so that is the core idea about data types, and then Python automatically manages this because all these are finally objects, and you don't need to specify what kind of data type it is, and such languages are also called as dynamically typed languages. And we also saw about variables, and there are some variables, some keywords which cannot be used as variables. Those things are on PPT. So and also we saw about properties of each data types, and we learned about if else condition, and we also learned about looping. We also looked at looping, why the looping exists, and how the looping happens at an imaginary assembly level code. And then we moved into while loop, how that can be automated using while loop, and then how that while loop can be automated into for loop as a shortcut. um, so we saw all of these things. Okay, in this session we will learn about functions. So how to define functions, what is a function, and uh, how do we what is the structure of function, and how do we make use of the functions. Okay, so the first concept behind the functions is to reuse the code. That means in the last session we saw a loop like this. Okay, so this loop was written in order to automate or automate a repetitive task. That means there are few instructions which needs to be repeated, and this was put inside the for loop. Okay, so in order to so essentially what we are doing is we are trying to reuse the code, and we are putting it under a loop. Okay, so how about there are always small jobs, small modules which needs to be called every time. For example, say if you are opening WhatsApp, it gives us a notification saying that okay, this many numbers of the messages are pending to be read, and these messages are read, and things like that. So there are different features that WhatsApp provides. And say for example, you need to write code to just to calculate number of 100 messages and give you as notification. So either you can without any functions or loops, what you need to do is you need to write some code, get notifications. So not get notifications, some code such as read through all the messages and find out which are the unread messages. Okay, so the and you need to repeat this operation for every message that you receive, and it needs to be updated for every time. Okay, so in such cases, what happens is there is a repetitive task, and if you start writing code, maybe that feature is used by Android just to display the number of unread messages as notification, and the same functionality is maybe used inside your WhatsApp application. And it is also possible that maybe you are using it on your laptop as WhatsApp web, and you're still seeing the same data. So all this kind of there are now we saw there are three places which the counting number of notifications are used. So if you start writing code, then the code will repeat at all the three places. So in order to and if there is a bug, say for example, for every new messages, bug in the sense there is a problem. For example, maybe some messages which are in the group are not counted as part of this notification. So then then it is a bug, so it is not working as expected. So then what we do is, if there are if the same notification code is running on three different places, you have to fix that bug in all three different places. So now this is cumbersome, because real time in industry, what happens is there are different people working on different modules and different sections of the application. So it is possible that one guy fixes it, and he does not communicate to other people. So now you can see bugs in two places, and one place it is fixed. So the core idea here is avoid duplication of code. So in order to avoid duplication of code, what we do is we write functions. So the function is nothing but, I can put this function. Say yesterday we had an example that you go to all the shops that are in your area, and then count if the shop and see if the shop number is even or odd. Okay, so if I want to put this in a function, and imagine that same instruction is given to all the in all the villages or in all the districts, same instruction is given. Okay, so if you have to write code for, say you have a file for each of the district or each of the villages, so then you need to copy paste this and send to all the places. Okay, so in order to say if there are 1 lakh villages or or 1,000 district, then it's really difficult to manage the code. Okay, so in order to come out of this, what we do is, we need that piece of code to be executed only when it is necessary, and avoid duplication. In such cases, what we do is we write something called as function. That means instead of calling the whole all there are 9 lines of code here, or 7 lines of code. So instead of repeating this 7 lines of code into 100 places, that means which makes it 700 lines of code, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten this into something called as functions. So these are also called as subroutines at assembly level terminology. Subroutines are nothing but repetitive code. Okay, so what we do is how do we define functions is simple. There is a keyword called as def. Def means define function, or it's a shortcut for definition. Def get shops. Okay, and then 1 2 3 7 8 lines. Okay, so I need to tell that this instruction must be part of this function. So in order to do that, similar to for loop, in order to tell that these instructions belong to this for loop block, we put a colon, and then we use spaces or tabs in order to tell that this belongs to this section. Okay, say a similar idea is used in functions. We use a colon to tell that there are sub instructions that are followed by colon, and how many number of instruction is based on this spacing. Okay, so this is telling that there's a block beginning below. The spaces are used to tell the ending of the instruction, because if there is a change, say if I write a statement here, print done. Okay, after function, so this doesn't belong to this function, so I don't have any space. So this function knows that, okay, these are my instructions to be executed. So when the interpreter sees there are no spaces, or it comes out of the current spacing section, it knows, okay, it doesn't belong to me. Okay, so it doesn't this is not part of function. Okay, that is the okay. Now let us see, it doesn't it won't work. So I want to bring up one more concept. So I'll just try to execute and let us see what is happening. Okay. Okay. Now you can see that this code is not at all executed. Okay, only this code is executed. So let us just comment this code and save it. Nothing is executed except this print at line number 19. Okay, so reason is that, so once I define a function, I need to call it somewhere. Okay, let us call this function. That means this is a shortcut or shorthand to for all these instructions. Okay, so instead of repeating this code, I'm just doing it in one line. So what I do is just the calling of function is you use the same function name and then followed by the brackets. Okay, so let us see, but this also won't work. Let us see why. Okay. Okay, let us just okay, now there is an important concept which I will tell. Okay. Now what happens is when the interpreter looks for variables, say for example this is a variable and it searches this number in an order that this number could be also repeated here. Okay, say let us just try to put different numbers in order to learn about the scope of these variables. Okay, I will just print number. Print number. Okay, this is inside the function. So this must be a string because this is printed as is and then followed by parameter number. Okay. Okay, so the way that Python looks for the numbers, see now there are two variables which are actually same variables, but it has different scope. That means, so here sometimes while reading the code, what you can think, what you might be wondering is why this number is not taken here in the for loop, why this is taken instead. Okay, the reason is that there is an order order of looking up the variables, which is an important concept. That order is shown here. So what any variable which is under the execution, so Python interpreter looks up in the local area. That means local area here it is function. Okay, this is a function and this is local, and if this is not present, only then it looks up in a global area. Global area is nothing but which doesn't belong to any block. Okay, then any variable which is defined here inside any block, that becomes further local. So the idea is there is a superset which is a global scope. That is nothing but here in line number 8 example, and then enclosing scope, that means enclosing scope is function here, and then this is for us this is a local scope. And also it is possible that you can define a new variable here, number is equal to 34, and this number is definitely different than this number because it searches for further local scope. So this is how the ambiguity or the searching of the variables happens. So now this is a simple way to eliminate ambiguity. So this is how the compiler thinks. It looks for first variable, nearest variable in the block, then nearest variable in the next block, and then if it doesn't get, it looks up here. So let us completely eliminate this number, and I will also remove this, and then let us see what happens. Okay, so it is taking inside. So this number is now this, because there is no variable here, because I just commented it. Okay, so let us see. I'll comment even this, then what compiler or the interpreter tells me. Okay, so compiler or interpreter Python tells me that the number is not defined. So say for example, this get shops is an interface to all the other files. That means this is used in say hundreds of other districts, and then if I need to expose this, this is also called as an interface. Any function function is can also be called as interfaces. That is because this can be called in different modules, such as I can create a I can call it in this file, or I can call it in any other file, or anything that is running on this system. So this is also called as an interface. Okay, so why it is called an interface is because any interface takes some input and gives you some output. Okay, so the idea here is, if I want to expose this interface to all the shops in all the districts, what I will do is I will tell okay, I will give a documentation telling that use this interface, which is having it takes input as a list of numbers, and gives output as here I can maybe here I'm not returning anything, so output none. Okay, so it is just processing and coming out. Okay, so here in fact I can return certain values, which we will see. Okay, so here it is returning nothing. So it will take a list of numbers. For example, if this interface generates a report in say in an Excel sheet, or in a CSV format, or in XML format, so I don't need a return value. What it does is it just dumps file here. So it doesn't return anything, but it will create a file. Okay, so output is, let us just imagine that okay, output is generating a report. In such cases we don't need a return value. Okay, so if it takes input as a list of numbers, I need to tell this function that take list of numbers. Okay, so in order to do that, I will send some variable inside these braces, enclosed in these braces. That means the input for this interface or this function is numbers. But in Python, since we do not tell what kind of variable this is, we do not specify the data type of this variable. We just put variable as is. This is how it is used. But there is a slight difference in C++. In C++, what we do is we tell what is the written type of that particular function, get shops, and then we also tell that okay, what is the data type of this. Say I have a user defined function, user defined data type, such as array numbers. Okay, so this is how a function is written, and then return some integer. Okay, return some x value. So the difference is here we do not specify any data type here, and we do not have even the return type. But in Python 3 we have a feature for that, but we do not specify this as of now. But you can, there is a way to specify, which we will see when it is ready. But usually it is not required to specify data, because Python automatically does that. Okay, so that is about getting parameters. And how do I return, say I need to count the number of odd shops. Okay, so what I do is count odd numbered shops. Okay, I'll just define a variable here, and I will just increment it here whenever it is count odd plus 1. Okay, and then I need to return this value, because the idea here is, instead of outputting nothing, I am counting count of odd numbered shops. Okay, so I need to return it. That is nothing but return count odd. Okay. So now let us see what happens. Okay, there is a missing argument, numbers, positional arguments. So okay, let us say, for example, imagine that this get shops is exposed. Imagine for a moment that this is a different file, this is a different module altogether. So in this function, I say I am giving an interface telling that, okay, use this interface to take a list of numbers and return a number, which is nothing but count number of shops. So in the documentation, what I do is I just give this function name, and also what is the input and what is the output. That's all. So user, whoever is using, is not bothered how the calculation is done. So what he does is, okay, I use this, and what I need to do is I will give the list of shop numbers that is in my district. Say 67, 78, 99. There are 3 shops in this district. So let us see what is happening. Okay, number. Okay, I put it as a number. Okay, so you can see that in the other file, get shops is getting called in a different district, and that is being passed with a parameter that there is a list of shops, and it is getting executed, but the return value is not stored anywhere. So in order to store the return value, what I need to do is say C shops. I can define a new variable, and then I can simply use that, keep that, and then just to make sure that it is getting filled up. You can see that now we have automated the whole idea of this much of code. So instead of calling it in, say, 100 places, so if you were to write, so this is like now about 15 lines of code. If you need to, if you had to write it in 700 or 100 different files, it would have been like 700 or 800 lines of code. And since if there is a new feature, say the new feature, in the sense here, the feature could be something like, okay, now you are counting odd numbered shops. Now you can I need also to count even numbered shops. So in order to put a feature, you modify this function, and there is only single place that it gets executed. Okay, so the advantage here is there is no duplication of code. There you can add features in one place, you can fix bugs in one place, and then you can simply use the same function. If there is a change in return type, then you need to change your code a little bit, but you don't need to change all the at all the places. So this is the core use of functions. So also you can instead of passing directly hard coded data, these are called hard coded. Hard coded in the sense, if you directly pass something, say for example in your code, actually there is another way to get shop numbers. For example, you are scanning the shop numbers using some scanners, so you cannot hard code it. So you need to take input from that list. Okay, input list, I can define a variable, and then I can say, okay, the input list is something like, okay, this is a variable again. So those all scanned shop numbers are stored in stored in the this s- stored in this variable, and that variable is passed. So now we have separated. It doesn't matter from where you're getting input. I'm using a variable, and then uh, this simple line will look very elegant than to write all of this in one place. Okay, so that is about functions. So let us look at its actual signature and things like that. What are those uh, specific things about function structure? Okay. Now, okay, we saw about how to write a function. Function is nothing but there is a variable, and there is a if that variable is followed by def, that means I am going to define a function, and then if it followed by braces, that means it is taking um, where input as a variable as an input, and then so these are also called as arguments, and this is function name, and this is the keyword, and then this the whole thing is logic, and you can return something, or you can choose not to return anything. It's such examples are generating reports, um, or generating some sort of files, or doing some action which is not depending on the other modules. Okay, so such cases you don't need to return. By default, Python returns there is a keyword called as none, which is equivalent to null in C++. None means it's an object which tells that there is nothing. So that nothing is also should be defined for computers in order to tell that there is nothing. So null means it is pointing to in C++ is it is pointing to address 000, which is the first row in the RAM. Okay, so that is used as nothing. That means if you try to access any data from that point, you don't get anything because nothing is stored there. Okay, so that is a imaginary space. Okay, so similarly in Python it is called as none, but none is not equal to zero, but it is an object which we will learn about objects. It's called as a none object. Okay, so by default the function in Python returns none, and this is how the function is written. And you might be wondering, what is this? This is called as a docstring. Docstring is nothing but it's also called as a documentation string. That means you can write a function, and in below if you start a string, if you write something, so a text or whatever, and enclose it within three apostrophes, or you can also use quotes. So if it has three single quotes, usually single quotes are used. So say three single quotes, because if you use double quotes, what happens is you will get confused that okay, there are six single quotes. Okay, so usually it's three single quotes, and the doc string can be put here. That means it's an information for someone who is reading your code, that this file. Okay, so now we have about 7 lines of code here. So there can be functions which are having 50 lines of code or 100 lines of code, even more than that. So it is not required to read through all the logic and understand. So if a developer writes this doc string, then gives a lot of information and easy to read the code. Okay, this function counts the number of odd numbers. Input is list of numbers, and output is an integer number which counts odd numbers. So if you read this, you don't read through the logic, because if you had to write the logic by yourself, if you give this logic to 10 people, there will be like at least 5 different ways to do this. So you don't need to crack your head just to understand the logic. Okay, so that is how the interfaces are working. That means you don't actually require to understand if WhatsApp if there is a module which reads the notifications from WhatsApp. It doesn't require to know the logic of how the notifications are calculated. he just needs to use that particular say interface and pass some arguments and just get output from it. It is just like bank account. You don't require to understand all the calculations inside your bank account to calculate your EMI or the interest or some offers or anything. You don't need to understand how it is calculated, but you just need you put the money and you take out the money with whatever the interest is given by bank. Okay, so that functionality is if you need to abstract the functionality, or if you need to just not worry about the functionality, you write you write functions, and then you expose that interface to other, we can call that function in different places. So what are the uses? So we can reuse the code, we can fix the bug at one place, and less code and maintainability. So this is how the functions are written and used. Okay, so for any questions on functions, because I'm going to give a small exercise which helps you to understand all the concepts that you have learned so far. That is writing if else conditions and for loops, and also the functions. Okay, so we'll discuss about that. Before that, if you have any questions, please ask.
So, Digant, I have a question.
Okay.
So, you told about having input and all, right? So, passing there is a
Right.
hard coding values in the input list.
Right.
So, if at all we are actually prompting users to input the values,
Right.
so like seeking the input from them. So, how
Correct.
do we handle that?
Right. We'll come to that in next session. I'll be covering how do you get inputs from command line and also from files. I'll be covering
Okay.
that. There is a simple function. Also, that is a function inside. Actually, the print itself is a function which is provided naturally by Python by default, and it takes arguments as a list of arguments which are separated by comma, and it calculates. So there is a corollary. Instead of printing, we can also scan the values from input places. That we will see in the next session.
Okay. Also, this function that you have written, right?
Uh-huh.
So, that function, can you use it like one? I mean, you just have the function only in a separate Python file,
Uh-huh.
and then just call it here. So
Yes,
that's also
yes, yes,
possible,
yes,
right?
yes. It is very much possible. Yes. So that is the intention of using this one. For example,
Okay.
we wrote a okay. We have a function here, right? Get shops. What I'll do is I'll just try to create a new file. Okay, so okay, I have created a new Python file, and let us actually call this function. So how do we call this function here? Is actually simple. We try to import. Import is a keyword. Import this the file. The files are actually now we can call it as modules. Import import files. So if you're using ID like this, it will automatically search, and it will tell, it will give suggestions. Okay, so that is one of the advantages of using VS Code or such Eclipse or any such IDs. Okay, now import. For example, you don't know what are the modules inside if else. Okay, if else is is a file here. So um, file name, that is a module name. In order to find out all the all the functionality about if else, what you do is there is a keyword called as dir. If you just hover on any keyword on VS Code, right, it will give you the documentation of that. That is nothing but whatever we wrote here. Okay, this doc string is actually displayed here. Okay, so let us see what is if it is called an it tells written alphabet is list of names of attributes of given an object. So everything is an object. We'll come to that objects later, but just to briefly, everything is an object in Python. So when you pass an object in to the function called as dir. So that is our function. It is defined as a function dir, a def function internally. So you don't know what are the features inside this function, because I have written one feature called as get shops. So there could be like 10 more features. So just to in order to get information of that those things, you can just say call get shops. There, okay, I'm not printing anything, so it returns a string. Print I'm just going to print this. Okay, so you can see that, okay, if else is my module here, and you can see that get shops is listed here. So this is a variable here, which is on global scope. So it gives all the things which are in global scope. So get shop is a function that I have defined here. It comes in the list of so it's like object. Okay, it is an object, and object has basically two things. One is operations, and one is the list of variables, that list of properties, such as, for example, if I take apple as an object. Apple has few properties, such as it has a certain color, it has a certain weight, and its name. So it could be some say Kashmiri apple, or something like Belgian apple, or whatever it is. So these are the variables, and there are some operations. For example, you can get the color of color of apple. Actually we are seeing the apple and detecting its color. So the idea, if you start writing code, is that, okay, you need to write a function that, okay, get the color. It is possible that apple has multiple colors, say green and red. So if you want to get the color of particular apple, what you do is apple dot get color. So it will return the particular color. Okay, we'll jump into objects in the coming classes, but the whole idea is that so these parameters, operations and parameters are listed inside the dir. So it just looks up what are all the things inside the inside this function. Not function, actually, this is a object. Function is also an object. In Python, everything is an object. This is a function object, and it looks everything in this module. Okay, so that is how the dir knows. Okay, these are the functions. Okay, so this is one of the ways to get its details. So in order to call that particular function, what I do is if else is the module name here. This is the module name, and get shops. So it automatically gives me. So let me call without any parameters. Let us see. Okay, so now it is telling that Python is telling that, okay, you are calling get shops from this module, but you are not giving any arguments, because this get shops must be called with arguments. So Python will immediately tell that, okay, there are no parameters. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just go here and say this is read from somewhere. Just imagine that it is read from somewhere, and just I'll just pass this as a parameter. Okay, so once I call this, so this all actually got executed, but we are not storing its return value anywhere. So what we can do is we can either store it here and use it. Let us use it in print statement. Print statement is just to see. Actually, you can use it anywhere. For example, maybe you are getting this shop count and doing further processing. Okay, maybe you're doing putting some data science logic or something like that, and doing some statistical analysis. Okay, so this variable is contains all the count of all the shops, and then you're just printing. So this is how you can simply, without knowing internal logic about this get shops, You're just calling it here. And imagine if you had to write this 7 lines of code here, and 7 lines of code say there are 100 modules which is calling this, and then it's really difficult to maintain code. So that is the core idea about functions. So actually this idea is actually coming from assembly level code. So these are called subroutines. So since there was no enough space to execute the programs to store the data code data inside the RAM. So what they did was they did optimization, telling that okay, this function also has an address, so I'll store this address, and instead of calling the function I'll call the address. So this is called a subroutine. In normal routine, so there is a subroutine. That means okay, go back to other and read that address. So from there you can do that. So that idea is coming from assembly level language. Then the C++ use it as functions, and the same thing is used as functions in Python. So that is about function. Any more questions? Okay, so I think there are no questions. Just ping me if you have any questions. Not a problem. Okay, so this is an exercise. This I have also put it in assignment. So just to give an interesting use case. Let us imagine that there is a sensor at Bangalore toll gate, such as Nelmangala or even Mysore or whatever toll gate it is. So there is a sensor at toll gate. What this sensor does is it reads the vehicle registration number as an integer. Okay, so if my car number is 5810 K 5810, it just stores 5810 as an integer and puts it in a list. Okay, so that is stored in a list. Maybe there is say 48,000 or 50,000 vehicles which is passing through that toll gate every day. So these numbers are stored in a list. Okay, so WAP means write a program. Write a program to count number of odd and even numbered vehicles from the given list of from the given list, which is from sensor. Okay, so function takes list of integers, what we just discussed. It takes a parameter. So this is how usually the requirement is defined. So requirement will be defined, telling that okay, I need a feature, and features input is this and output is this. So input is here, list of integers, and it returns two integer values. One is number of odd numbered vehicles, second is even numbered vehicles. Okay, so actually in Python, a function can return multiple values at a time, and you can, and it will be put in form of tuples that we learned yesterday. Okay, so returns two integer values. So this is the first exercise. So this is the function that you need to write. Then just to give an idea about how the features are inserted into the function. So you need to write another function which is called reporting or reports. So now the use case is government needs to analyze the number of even and odd number vehicles to make a decision on traffic control. That means like in Delhi, maybe here we allow only odd numbered vehicles on certain days and even number on certain days. So I need three different reports. So one report is a sensor report, which is like displayed on traffic signal or at the toll gate. So these are the number of even and odd number vehicles today. And there is also a report which is given to chief minister, saying that okay, so that is a different module. So this is a different module, and there is also a report given to given as a security report to district police commissioner. So all this these two people are the key people who make a decision in this case. So you need to write three different functions: sensor report, for principal report, and security report. So here, and then use this function and print the values in those reports. Just print the values. You don't need to create any report. Just print those values. So this is a second exercise on top of this. So this will Actually take, if you don't know anything about programming before, maybe it will take half an hour or less than that. And then the third exercise is to is in the same function. The idea is, say there are new cars which are getting registered every day, so the traffic is actually increasing year by year. Just to accommodate them, that district administration or chief minister does is, okay, we will add 40% buffer, additional buffer to these numbers, and then make a decision. Okay, so the additional requirement is add 40% buffer to these numbers. Okay, for example, if the odd numbers are, number of odd numbers are just 10, you need to add 40% of that. That means it becomes 14. So that is how the new requirement is added. Okay, so now by doing this exercise, you will have to use for loop to loop through this list, and then you need to use if else condition to find out if it is an even or odd number. And third is what we learned today, functions. You need to write function, and you need to write different functions and then call it there. And you will, by doing the third exercise, you will realize that without even touching sensor report, principal report, and security report, you can just make changes in at one place, and then this feature is added. So what you realize is reuse of the code, and you can fix at one place, and you will learn that, okay, less code is written, and also you can maintain at one place. So these are all the features that these are all the uses that by using functions. Basically, what we're doing is, we have an idea, and we have split that idea into smaller piece, and then since those smaller pieces are repetitive jobs, we have put it inside a loop. And since this is called again at multiple places, we have again put it in a smaller block which is called function. So actually we are trying to make things easier for us to do the job. So this is how the automation or any kind of code is built. Okay, so this we will learn in coming days, and how to organize modules, and how to call interfaces, and things like that. We will once this hands-on is over, we will learn about how do we take inputs from a specific say keyboard or anywhere, or we can also read a file and take that data as input information. And also we'll learn about how to handle errors. So these things will continue in next class. So this is an exercise. Please complete it. Try to complete it, because this exercise is like a milestone in your learning, because you will use all the concepts: if else, for loop, and then functions. Okay, so, and you will face some problems, and just search it in Google, and if you don't understand, ask. Okay, so we will close this session by this exercise, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, anything else to discuss?
That's it, Digant. I think thank you so much. It was really a wonderful session. Yeah.
Okay.
So